Okay, do we have any other questions from the floor, from the audience? Maybe one or two more questions? Okay, if not, then I have a question for both Javier and Shahrukh as well. What are the issues you face as you're working on some of these projects, considering that the source of financing isn't the traditional source of financing? So for instance, with projects such as Banyan Tree, you have a constant developer-focused sort of financing model. For some of the technological projects that we do in Singapore, we've got government grants for certain specific technologies. Have you faced serious problems that might halt the projects in terms of financing? And I know you alluded to that a little bit when the SOS group pulled some strings and so on, but what are the major challenges you face to that extent?
Well, hello?
Yeah, it's working.
Okay. Well, that is the key of most of our works, the economy fact. We used to work in one hand with the pencil and in the other hand with the Excel. And that is the only way that we can do the projects. So all of these projects have for example, the last one, the cost was $20,000, the dark box. And each project only can be built if there is a real possibility in terms of normal budget to build it.
The works that we showed you just now predominantly is supported by donor agencies from all over the world. So the way we kind of work with them is that definitely there is a budget that is set right at the outline. Sometimes the one that you saw at the tsunami and then what we are now working at in Nepal as well is where we tend to feel that if that is stretched a little, it goes a long way to sustain and help the community. I must tell you the kind of, when you say problems, where our experience, even though in India was of building 600 homes, was so very different than what we are doing in Nepal. In Nepal, the government said that you need to have owner-built homes in the same spaces where the homes had collapsed. So our whole idea was we are now setting up a supply chain and a training program for 300 farming families. We are training them up with masonry. We are training them up with understanding structure and earthquake-resistant structures and things like that. And then, the learning that I as an architect get, one of the farming families, they said, sorry, we will not be able to handle my house for the next 1 month. So we asked him why. He said, the crop in my field requires more attention. So we had to understand the issues that we as architects do not even kind of come across or comprehend.
Thank you, Shahrukh. Yes, we have a question from the lady up front.
Good afternoon, sir. So myself, Aarti from Jaipur. I have a question like you had all very huge lands and huge plots. In the present condition, when we begin at designing or doing practicing, we have very small plots of lands with the basic requirement of the client. So in that agenda, could you please tell us how the sustainability works at that practical level?
I think one of the things that we saw, if you saw the homes that we've done in Alibag, these are very, very small. 10 children, one mother, 3 rooms. And we have to accommodate all of that. But we learned from the tradition that was already there of a little courtyard. That little courtyard gave a phenomenal amount of space and extended life from an individual small space into the open area. Of course, we were able to do it because of the climatic conditions. I would not do the same thing when we are building in the Alpine range in Nepal, where because the climate issues are very different. So I suppose one would have to layer and balance those. That's what our response was.
This problem is not happened in the poor, unfortunate country. In the modern cities, metropolitan, we have the same problem. In the Siu-Pok apartment who grow start growing in Singapore. In Hong Kong, even much more smaller. We develop a project which make as small as possible. One apartment for young couple of 36 square meter, a 2-bedroom of 55 square meter. We even try to compress it. How can as small as possible and with the modern lifestyle is even more challenging. So that is a challenge, but the idea is how to prioritize your work and then know how to sequence. We use this as a project for the last year's student for SUTD. So we try to create a project of, I think if not wrong, it's about 24 square meter apartment. And the condition is you need to be able to work, to sleep, to eat, and to party. So they create a lot of things because the modern lifestyle is maybe it's only for 2 or 3 persons, but they invite the friend as well. So it's more modern. So the challenge is always there.
Yeah, just to add a bit of clarification, Dharmali was talking about a collaboration between Banyan Tree and the Singapore University of Technology and Design, wherein new prototypes of housing can actually come about. And I saw the product of that as well. It's pretty interesting. Yes, we've got time for, wow. All right, can we do 3 questions all together and probably have 1 answer? Because I'm getting some curious signals from the guys on the side. We'll start off with the gentleman.
I just have 1 small question. I think when it's about luxury, am I audible?
Yes.
So this is about luxury projects mainly. And when it's a luxury project, the client already knows it's going to cost me a bomb. He is ready for it. So from the architecture side, in today's world, what matters more? Is it the design or is it the storytelling? Is it the kind of a conceptual story behind the whole thing? Because nowadays we see Gucci, Armani, every brand, they are so much running behind the stories. So from an architect's perspective, only looking at the luxury segment, what matters more?
All right, so we'll hold on to that.
The question is to Mr. Mistry and Tan.
Okay, we'll hold on to that. We'll take on a second question for now. So the first question, just to recap, is when does a luxury brand become sensitive towards specific cultures, I suppose, if I could summarize as that?
My name is Sarosh. My question is mainly directed to Shahrukh. It was really inspiring to see your approach in different contexts. But I was just curious that in your SOS projects in India, you had a more fluid form. And the one in the earthquake building in Nepal had some concrete, beams across. Was it driven more by the government's guidelines, or was it some solution that was kind of, approached from the ground? Just a curiosity. Yeah.
All right, so second question. Hold that thought. And one last question from, one last one.
My question is a sort of extension to the question asked by the lady. Talking of sustainability and linking it with the other term of scale. So my question is to the entire panel. On whatever scale of projects that all of you are working, what are the challenges you think would be taking that level of sustainability, maybe, somebody working on a scale of a house, maybe on a village, or maybe a resort, or maybe on a township. What are the ingredients or challenges that you feel would be the key ingredient of linking that sustainability to the next scale of the thing?
All right, so if I can once again summarize the questions. The first question that came from the gentleman was more on the luxury branding, the style, the aesthetics almost, and how that ties back into the vernacular. Maybe, first of all, Darmali could give it a shot.
Just now you compared the budget or the story. Yeah. The budget is always there, but not necessarily enough. The most important is the budget to balance with the revenue and the profit you can bring in. And the revenue and the profit is depend on what you can sell. So the brand is become important to determine about the price. But again, the brand is not only selling the product, but for us, the brand need to sell the whole experience. This is where the sense of place, the placemaking is important. It's difficult to sell with very high expensive if you just sleep in the room with a nice polished marble, but with a thick mattress, with whatever, but it's plain, it's just a room. But if you can create a story based on the sense of place, this is where, how is the local life, the lifestyle, and it's give a guest total different experience. Because if they chase a luxury, maybe they have more luxury than what they have in the house. You know, the luxury of space, we can give the luxury of privacy and all those things. That is where it's more important than the budget from the client. But at the end, you still need to have the budget because of the revenue. Yeah.
Have you ever woken up in a hotel room and suddenly forgotten where you were? Probably in hotels such as, can I say Marriott? In hotels such as the international chain hotels, which are so standard all across that when you wake up, it's like, where could I be? Right? I think part of the branding experience that, I'm not selling Banyan Tree, to be honest. I have been in one or two. Unfortunately, my own budget prevents me from staying in more Banyan Trees around the world, but I think there is a curious quality about the projects that they actually do that does land a bit of, okay, if you get up in the morning, this is a different place. And all of a sudden, I remember where I am. Right? And that's if I don't take my amnesia pills. Right? So that's the answer to the first question. Second question, would you want to give it a shot, Shahrukh?
Yes, Sarosh. I think one of the first things that happened, as I said, we were ready with all what we needed to do in terms of our architectural intervention, but the government guidelines took a while, and they did not give us permission to build for close to a year till the government guidelines were set. And I think that was very, very good. But the back and forth was important. The second part, in terms of the fluidity and the restriction of space, the base difference between what we are doing in Nepal and what we did in India was the fact that in India, the government gave us land, large chunks of land, because they wanted the fishermen who lived on the sea to move, because there's a Supreme Court guideline that everything has to be beyond 500 meters of the HTM. So we were able to kind of build there quite differently. In Nepal, we were building in the same footprint of where the actual farmers had their homes. So we did not have any other place to build with. On the contrary, even though the government gave us guidelines, there were spaces that could not follow or fall within the guidelines. They were tinier spaces. So we decided to work in sections and go up for giving the people the kind of spaces that they wanted.
Thank you, Shahrukh.
Oh, material choices. That was another learning, I must tell you. And maybe failures on our part as well. In Lakuridanda, it's amazing stone and amazing stonework as well. But you know what happened? Fear played a phenomenally large a statement in their this thing. They felt that it was the stone. And the only building that they are allowing us to do in stone is the Gomba, which is the community center, which we have started and are going to build in stone. Their own homes, they said, even if we want to kind of do that, we are not still clear of the fear of the fact that this material, they thought, they never kind of connected it to the system. So even though we tried to explain how we were taking connectors and making earthquake-resistant structures, they reluctantly agreed to do it for the community center, but not for their own homes.
And the third question, which happened about 3 hours ago, probably was a question of scale. Javier, would you want to address that?
I don't remember.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to have trouble you to once again summarize that question.
My question was linking sustainability to the scale. Like probably all of us grow, learn over the time that, started working on a smaller plot and going to a larger scale, because sustainability has to be linked on a holistic manner. So what challenges or ingredients you think would be when all of you, as a, like from whatever level you are working, you graduate to the next level of designing the things. So what would be the key ingredients to that, linking the sustainability and the scale?
All right, I think it's probably the most abstract question of the entire ARCASIA forum.
Yes. For that abstract, for that abstract question, we are going to give an abstract answer. So probably the way I think to answer this is, it's a research always, it's an equation. When you put all the variables in one side, technology, necessities, and that have to be equals high quality of life. That's all.
Wow, look at that. Now, my response to that, and further to that, I'll close off the session. I guess I've been given too many cues to close off the session. But my response to that really would be there are certain principles that underpin what sustainable development could be. Of course, at the end of today, I found that sustainability is so much more than just about environmental sustainability. It's about social sustainability. It's about community sustainability. It's about prolonging, once again, that longevity of the human spirit. And I think that will always transcend any single skill. You'll find that in a hut. You'll find that in a village. You'll find that, in the case of India, in the entire nation.
Can I add something? Let me add, our approach in the sustainability is a practicality. Get whatever you can achieve. No need to chase the certification. For example, when you design, do the passive design approach, natural light, cross-ventilation, that is the easiest. Get that one first. Then the rest is, you want to use solar panel, you want to use another renewable energy, depend on the ROI, whether it's make a payback. If you don't make payback, no need to apply. So do the practical, whatever you can do, but start with something first. That's it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, would you once again join me in thanking Mr. Shahrukh Mistry?
Thank you.
And I would